It's Parshas Toldos. The Torah says, "Vayetar Yitzchak laHashem lenoichach ishtoi ki akarahi." So he davened for her. Vayeoser lo Hashem vatahar Rivka ishtoi. So Rashi says, "Vayeoser loy v'loy lo." That Hashem answered his tefillah and not her tefillah. She'eina doime tefillas tzadik ben tzadik letefillas tzadik ben Rosha. So the tefillah of a tzadik ben tzadik is greater, and therefore Hashem answered Yitzchak's tefillah because he was a tzadik ben tzadik, and not her tefillah, she was a tzadik ben Rosha. Now, Bamas, you read the pasuk. There's nothing shver over here because it only says Vayeta Yitzchak laHashem. It doesn't say that she davened b'chlal. It says Vayeta Yitzchak laHashem l'noichach ishtoi and Vayoseh lo Hashem. But this is based on what Rashi said earlier on the words l'noichach ishtoi. Rashi said that opposite his wife, it doesn't just mean opposite his wife. Ze oimeid bezovis zoi umispalel v'zu oimedes bezovis zoi umispaleles. So they were both davening. And Mamela, it says Vayoseh lo Hashem. Is Rashi learned that Vayoseh lo, he tells us that Hashem answered his tefillah and not her tefillah because ein doime. The Mekor HaDvarim is in Yevamis Daf Samach Dalet. But we find this very hard to understand because look, we're always taught that the madrega of a person is defined by his the personal choices that he makes, by his bechira. Given circumstances don't define us, and they don't determine our madrega. So how could it be that just being a ben tzaddik puts you in a place where your tefillah is more miskabel than if you're a ben Rasha? I mean, everybody has the bechira to be like Moshe Rabbeinu or like Yeravam ben Avot, and based on his bechira and not on his lineage and genealogy, that's what defines his madrega. How could it be that a tzaddik ben tzaddik is on a higher madrega? Not only that, but we would say punkt fakert, we would say the opposite, because the maila of a tzaddik ben Rasha, we would say is greater, because he made himself into what he is. Whereas the tzaddik ben tzaddik got an education. I mean, he was inspired by his father. I mean, the fact that he's where he is not so much because of his own personal choice. He was lechatchila in a better place, and we actually see that Yaakov Avinu, in spite of the fact that he was born and raised in Yitzchak Avinu's home under the influence of Avram, and he came to the base Lavan when he was 84 years old. Nevertheless, it says in Lavan Garti, Rashi says, in Lavan Garti, v'taryag mitzvah shomarti, v'loy lamadati mi'maisav aroim, meaning that Yaakov Avinu takes, so to speak, credit for the fact that he wasn't influenced by Lavan. And this is a man that's already 84 years old and that was raised by Yitzchak and Avram Avinu. So, Kal v'chomer Rivka Imenu, that was born and raised in the home of Besuel and Lavan, and on her own, she chose the right path. Avada Hamayla is greater. And as Rashi says, in our parsha, on Vayehi Yitzchak ben Arboim, Bekachta Yis Rivka, Baz Besuel, Ha'arami, Mi Padan Arom, Achois Lavan Ha'arami, Loyla Yisho. Rashi says, "V'chi adayin lo nichtav shehi baz besuel v'achois lovan u'mipadan aram." All this information we already know. So why is the Torah repeating all this? Zokt Rashi, "Elo lahagid shivcha." The Torah is telling us her praises. Shehoisa bas Rasha v'achois Rasha u'mekoyma anshe resha v'lo lamda mimaaseh. No, so how is it possible that after all this, we say that her tefillah is inferior to the tefillah of Yitzchak because she's a tzaddik ben Rasha? L'chara being a tzaddik ben Rasha only makes her greater. Now, there's a general question about tefillah how and why tefillah works. The idea of tefillah is difficult to understand because the Rebbeinu Shalom knows everything. He doesn't need us to tell him about what we need. And if we deserve it, so he'll give it to us without asking for it. And if we don't deserve it, I mean, how is asking for it going to change anything? So it says in Sifrei Kadmonim that the tefillah makes the mispalel worthy of receiving what the Rebbeinu Shalom gives. But it's still difficult to understand why dafka tefillah. I mean, any mitzvah could make me worthy of being rewarded, of receiving goods. Why is it dafka tefillah that makes me worthy of getting what I need? So, the Gemara says in Brachos, one mandama, tefillas keneged tmidim tiknum. That tefillas were instituted keneged the tmidim. Now, l'chara, tefillah and tmidim are two opposites. Why do I say two opposites? Because what is tmidim? Tmidim is karbonis. And the Ramban in the beginning of Parshas Vayikra, when he talks about karbonis and he disagrees with the Rambam, what the Rambam says about karbonis, the Ramban says, which really comes from the Ibn Ezra. Ki ba'avur shemaisei ha'adam nigmorim b'machshava u'b'dibur u'b'maisa. Whatever a person does involves thought, talk, and doing. Siva Hashem ki kashe yechta v'yovi korban yismoich yodov olov keneged ha'maisa v'yisvade b'fiv keneged ha'dibur v'yisroiv ba'esh ha'kerev ha'kloyoy shem klei ha'machshava v'ha'taiva v'ha'kraayim keneged yodov v'raglov shalodom ha'osim komalachtoy v'yizrik adam al ha'mizbeach keneged domoy b'nafshoy kidei sheyachshoy v'odom ba'asoysay kol eile ki choto le'loikov b'gufoy b'nafshoy v'roi loy sheyishofech domoy v'yisorev gufoy lulei chesed ha'boire shelokach mimenu tmuro v'kiper ha'korban hazeh sheyeh domoy tachas domoy nefesh tachas nefesh v'roshei eivorei ha'korban keneged roshei eivorov etc. So the idea of tmidim that are karbonis is really that we're sacrificing what we have and we're sacrificing ourselves to the Rebbeinu Shalom. Whereas, what is tefillah? Tefillah is that we're asking the Rebbeinu Shalom to give us, as opposed to karbonis, where we're giving to him. We're giving up ourselves symbolically to the Rebbeinu Shalom and tefillah. I mean, we are the center, and we're asking him to give us. So how is it that tefillas are keneged tmidim? The pasuk says, "Lech lecha me'artzecha me'moladetecha me'beis avicha." It's the first of the Asora Nisyonos shenisnase Avram Avinu. Rashi says, "Lech lecha," go for yourself. Lahana oscha letoivascha v'shom escha legoy gadol v'kan yata zoicha leboni. This makes the nisayon smaller because he's being promised that he's going to be rewarded. Maybe it's even not much of a nisayon. So there are those that say that it says later on, "Vayelech Avram kasher diber elov Hashem." Kasher diber elov Hashem, meaning that in spite of the fact that he was promised all kinds of things for this halicha, nevertheless, he didn't go for that. He went just because Hashem told him. But the truth is that Hashem told him to go lahanaoschol l'tevoscha. So if he didn't go lahanaoschol l'tevoscha, he's not being hoylech kasher diber elov Hashem. Kasher diber elov Hashem actually means that he went lahanaoschol l'tevoscha. So the question is, so what's the nisoyin? So the pshat is that there's one level of nisoyin, which is giving up what I have. Meaning, if he would be giving up on children, he would be giving up on lohidia tivach ha'ba'olam. if he was giving up his hana and his taiva, that's one level of sacrifice. But there's even a greater level of sacrifice when I sacrifice myself, meaning my understanding, my outlook. In other words, to go with the belief that it's hana ascha and it's taiva ascha, that this is actually gonna bring him bonim, and even though haderech mema'etes is Hashem, nevertheless over here it's gonna be lohidia tivach ha'ba'olam. So he's sacrificing himself because he's giving up his mind, and that's a greater sacrifice than giving up possessions. And therefore, the nisoyan of Lech Lecha is such a great nisoyan because he went kasher diber elav Hashem. He went with the full belief that this is what's going to bring him banim, and this is what's going to bring him lohidia tivach ha'ba'olam, in spite of the fact that it goes against everything he understands. So this is the sacrifice that we have in tefillah that connected tmidim, because tefillah is really giving up the essence of myself and my ego, because tefillah represents the recognition and the emunah that only HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the Choynein La'adam Das, and only HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the Reifei Cholim, and only He is the Mavarech Hashanim. So we actually are machnia ourselves, our talents, our abilities. We're makriv. I'm makriv myself with the hakara that I'm totally dependent on the Rebbeinu Shalom, and I'm totally in Chesed Keil Kol Hayoyim. So avada the tefillas are keneged tmidim, and that's what the pshat is, that the tefillah makes us ro'ui for the Kabbalas Hashefa. Tefillah makes us worthy of receiving what we need. What's the pshat? Because Chazal say, the Gemara says in Brachos Daf Lamed Hey, Hashamayim shamayim la'Hashem va'oretz nosan lifnei Adam. Zok the Gemara that lifnei bracha is Hashamayim shamayim la'Hashem, la'acha bracha is ha'oretz nosan lifnei Adam. What does that mean? That means that before the bracha means before I recognize that everything is His. So there's a separation between the shamayim la'Hashem and the Oretz, because we're in conflict. If I take for myself, I'm going against Him. If He keeps it for Himself, He's going against us. Whereas once I recognize la'achar bracha, I recognize that it's all His, then I'm eating off His table. So the pshat is la'achar bracha is Oretz nasan l'fnei Adam. As a believer who understands that it's all from the Rebbeinu Shalom, so I'm not in competition with the Rebbeinu Shalom. My taking for myself is not in competition with the Rebbeinu Shalom, and therefore it's not son of Adam, and therefore it's not son of Adam. So through tefillah that we recognize that we're dependent on Him, so we can have it. As long as we don't recognize that we're dependent on Him, so then we're in conflict with Him, and then we can't have it. So it comes out that the yesod of tefillah is hachnor and bittul to the Rebbeinu Shalom by recognizing that we have nothing on our own. And so it says in the Rabbeinu Yoina and Brachos Daf Vav Amud Beis that only somebody sheyesh biyodoi midas ha'anova, only somebody who's humble. And what does humility have to do with tefillah? Because, tefillah is about not having a sense of self, about giving up your ego. Tefillah is about understanding that you're totally dependent on the Rebbeinu Shalom. Therefore, tefillah is connected with anova, and so also it says similarly in the Chayvus Alavavus and the Shar Cheshbon HaNefesh. So now we can say maybe that that's why the tefillah of a tzaddik ben tzaddik is greater than the tefillah of a tzaddik ben Rasha. In other words, we can say that in general, avada, the tzaddik ben Rasha is greater because he he did it on his own. But tefillah that requires total subservience and bittul, the tzaddik ben Rosha, who's a self-made man, can't reach that level of bittul, because after all, he's a self-made man. Whereas the tzaddik ben tzaddik, who was raised in a home of a tzaddik, always feels Masayagiu Maisai. He never feels that he's worthy. He never feels that he's enough. And therefore, his bittul and hachnoah is greater. And that's the maila of the tefillah, because tefillah is about bittul and hachnoah and humility. And that's why in this area, the tzaddik ben tzaddik, who's more humble, is his tefillah is greater than the tzaddik ben Rosha, who can't reach that madrega of humility. Avada, we're not talking, we're talking over here about the others and the imois, so we're not describing them. We're just talking about the message that can be gleaned from this chazal. But often that, sometimes in our times, we live in a time where many b'nei Torah are self-made. Their parents are not b'nei Torah, and therefore they suffer from the tzaddik ben Rosha syndrome, so to speak. In other words, they're self-made. They feel that, I'm a great man. And therefore, it's important to remember that the trap of being a tzaddik ben Rosha, the trap is that you feel that koichi va'oitzem yodi asali esachayel hazeh, and that's a problem not only in Gashmias, but also in Ruchnias. A person should never feel that he should never take credit for where he is and what he is. And he should always try to live his life like a tzaddik ben tzaddik. Okay, this is one pshat. Now I want to share with you another pshat. It's really a goynish pshat from my brother, Reb Chaim Yisrael. He said like this: the emes, the Lashon Rashi, loy v'loy lo, she'ein doimet tefillas tzaddik ben tzaddik l'tefillas tzaddik ben Rosha. So it is in most prints that we have. And so is the Girsa in Masechtas Yevamos. Now this Girsa is shver. Why? Because everywhere when we say Einoi Doime, A to B, the meaning is that the B is greater. In other words, we say Einoi Doime Shmia Laria. That hearing can't be compared to seeing. So what's greater? The latter. The seeing is greater than the hearing. Or we say, Einoi doime hevel sheyesh boi chet, lehevel she'ein boi chet, meaning that the hevel she'ein boi chet is greater. The latter is greater. Or when we say, Einoi doime mu'otin ha'osin es ha'torah, lemerubin ha'osin es ha'torah. So the merubin ha'osin es ha'torah are greater. So, if Chazal mean to say that the tefillah of the tzaddik ben tzaddik is greater, they should say she'ein adayim tefillah tzaddik ben Rosha with tefillah tzaddik ben tzaddik. But it says fakert. It says she'ein adayim tefillah tzaddik ben tzaddik with tefillah tzaddik ben Rosha. The mashma that the tefillah of the tzaddik ben Rosha is greater. Okay, now if you look in the hemshech of the Gemara in Yevamos, it says Amar Reb Yitzchok mipnei ma hoyu avoseinu akurim mipnei she'Hakadosh Baruch Hu misavel l'tfilosan shel tzaddik. That the Ovis and the Imois were Akorim and Akoros, because HaKadosh Baruch Hu is misave l'tfilosan shel tzaddik. Now, l'fizeh, the greater, the more choshev the tefillah is, HaKadosh Baruch Hu likes listening to it more. So therefore, since the tefillah of the tzaddik ben Rosha is greater than the tefillah of the tzaddik ben tzaddik, Hashem didn't answer her so fast. He wouldn't answer her, because he wants to hear more of that tefillah. But the tzaddik ben tzaddik, his tefillah is less choshev, and therefore HaKadosh Baruch Hu is willing to answer that tefillah earlier. So, in other words, Vaye'oseh loy Hashem she'einoi doime tefillah tzaddik ben tzaddik l'tefillah tzaddik ben Rosha. The tefillah of the tzaddik ben Rosha is greater, and therefore Hashem is willing to answer him before he's willing to answer her, because her tefillah, being that she's a tzaddik ben Rosha, is greater. You know, so this is really a Gainish Shizlach. Who is this Shmuli over here? And yet we don't know. It's a face I don't know, or I can't see. Okay, listen. So doesn't want to identify himself. It says like this in the beginning of the brachas that Yitzchak ben Yaakov Avinu. It says v'yitein lecha Elokim mital hashamayim u'mishmani haaretz. But this pasuk is the beginning of the parsha. It should say yitein, ve'yitein, and he will give, and it doesn't connect to anything before. So the Rashi is coming to answer this question, and Rashi says v'yitein v'yachzor v'yitein, v'yitein v'yachzor v'yitein. So what does that mean? It would be better if he gives him one shot and not a v'yitein v'yachzor v'yitein. Why is the bracha v'yitein v'yachzor v'yitein? Be'emes we see that further on by the brachas that were given to Esav, it says Hine mishmani haaretz yeh moshevecha u'mital hashamayim me'ol. So you see that over here it's not v'yitein v'yachzor v'yitein, but Hine mishmani haaretz yeh moshevecha u'mital hashamayim me'ol. It's a permanent situation. So Esav's bracha is better than Yaakov's. Yaakov's is a bracha v'yitein v'yachzor v'yitein, another handout and another handout, whereas Esav gets it all at once. Now on the pasuk v'yitein l'cha Elokim, Rashi says davar acher mahu ha'Elokim bedin, that you're going to get it only if you deserve it. Im roi l'cha yitein l'cha v'im lav lo yitein l'cha. Aval Esav, Omar Mishmani Haaretz Yeh Moshevecha Ben Tzadik Ben Rosh Yitim Lecha. Umimenu Lo Mat Shloime K'she'asa Abba Yisidet Tfilosei Yisrael Shu Bal Emunah U'Matzik Olav Esadin Lo Yikra Lecha Tagor Lefichoch V'Nosato. The pasuk says V'Nosato Leish Kidrochov Asher Teida Es Levavoi Aval Nochri Mechuser Amona. So you see that Yaakov Avinu gets only bedin, and Esav gets whether he deserves it or not. It comes out that the choite is niskar. I mean, the Esav gets without deserving, and Yaakov gets only when he deserves it. Why is that? You know, the Gemara says in Yoimad Afai involved Shalu Talmidav as Reb Shimon bar Yochai B'pnei ma lo yorad lahem liYisrael mon Hamachas b'shana. Why didn't they get them on once a year? And they should have for the whole year. Amar lahem Emshol lochem moshol lema davar doimen lemelech basav edom sheyesh lo ben echad pasak lo mezaynoisav Hamachas b'shana. He gave him the money for the whole year. So he only came to his father once a year. So he changed the malach and he gave him every day. So he had a relationship with his son. He saw him every day. Right? We didn't know what tomorrow will bring. Nimtzu kulam mechavnim eslibam lashamai. So in other words, the Rebbeinu Shalom gave them one every day and not once a year in order that we should have a relationship with him. So that's l'chayr the bracha of Yaakov, v'yitein v'yachzor v'yitein, time and time again, because only in such a context will we have a relationship with the Rebbeinu Shalom. Masha'enkin by Esav is mishmanei haaretz yeh moshevecha. Without him worrying about what's going to be, that's like Posak loy mezaynoisav Hamachas b'shana, because the Rebbeinu Shalom is not interested in a relationship with him, and therefore he just lets him have it once and for all, and it's not dependent on whether he's worthy or not. Now, in the Gemara in Yom Adafayim, hey, the Gemara says, Tanya Omer Reb Yosi Boyu Re'ei Shaloike Midas Hakadosh Baruch Hu Midas Basav V'Dom. Midas Basav V'Dom Maknit Eschaveiroi Yoredim L'Chayv. Somebody upsets you, you get on his case. Aval Hakadosh Baruch Hu Einoi Kein Kilel Es HaNochash. He cursed the Nochash. However, Oile Legag Mizaynoisav Imoi Yored Lamata Mizaynoisav Imoi. So he was cursed, but he actually comes out in a better state. I mean, he offer toichal wherever he goes. He has the offer. No, is the chabrocha. So says the Rebbe Rabbeinu Mipshischa that the klala is that he's not going to have any needs anymore. And if you don't have any needs, you have no relationship with the Rebbeinu Shalom. As the pasuk says, "Akfirim shoyagim lateref luvakish mikeil ochlam," but the Nochosh has no relationship, and so it is with every individual that whoever is closer to the Rebbeinu Shalom, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is misavel tefilosai, meaning HaKadosh Baruch Hu is interested in the relationship with him, and therefore he lets him hang. Therefore, he doesn't just give him once and for all. He wants to hear that tefillah. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu misave. Lama hoimois akorois mipnei HaKadosh Baruch Hu misave letfilosin shel tzadikim. You know, the pasuk says, Keli, lama azaftoni, rochoik mi yeshuasi, divrei sha'agosi, Eloikai, ekro yoimam v'loi sane, v'layla v'loi dumioli, v'ato kodesh yoshiv filas Yisrael. What's the hemshich of these psukim? It could be that because of the great tainug that the Rebbeinu Shalom has from the Tfilas Yisrael, to the point that HaKadosh Baruch Hu was kaviyochel yoshev on Tehillos Yisrael, v'ato kodesh yoshev Tehillos Yisrael. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is mizgala in this world through the Tehillos Yisrael. Therefore, he's azaftoni, and he's rochik mi yeshuasi divrei sha'agosi. In other words, from the time that I cry out to him until I'm saved, until I have a Yeshua, it's very far. Rochik mi yeshuasi divrei sha'agosi. Ekro yoimam v'loi sane. V'laylo v'loi dumioli. Why is that? Because v'ato kodesh yoshev tehillos Yisrael. Because HaKadosh Baruch Hu misave l'tfiloson shel tzadikim. So Mamela, so that's it. Rabbi Say, I want to wish you all a guten chodesh, und a guten Shabbos,